Today on the Self Smarter podcast.
When we're managing, we're typically working in a job function, right? Like we have functional things that need to happen. Whereas when we're leading, we're influencing someone to do their job a certain way or to think about the work in a greater perspective. Hi, we're Danelle and Megan, the hosts of this conversation-centric podcast for leaders seeking to be better every day. Whether you choose to be a leader in the workplace, at home, or in your community, we believe the most effective leaders are equipped to not only be self-starters, but self-smarter.
Hello, and welcome to Self Smarter. I'm Megan, and this is my friend and co-host Danelle.
Hello.
Hello, welcome back.
Thank you.
You're back to the States.
I am.
Been on a little adventure.
Yeah, I would call it a quite sizable adventure.
Yeah, a last-minute summer adventure.
Yeah, on a whim, I decided to go to Greece. So it was amazing. It had been on my list for many, many years, and we had family. Drew's aunts moved there, and they got a gold visa. I don't know if y'all have ever looked into that, but there's it's called a golden visa.
Golden visa.
Yeah. Anyway, they can live there 5 years. They bought some property in Crete. So it just inspired me, and Mackie had some time off between her stuff, and so I was like, what the heck, let's go check out Greece. And so we went and spent almost 2 weeks there, went and stayed on 3 different the islands. So we did Milos, Santorini, and we ended up in Crete. And just for reference, I didn't realize this, but Crete is really big, and so we went and spent time on both ends of Crete, which Crete is like California. It's so diverse, and it's the terrain is completely different in one space as it is in the other. But so it was amazing. It lived up to all my expectations. So
Okay. You've been to a lot of European places.
I have.
A lot of destinations.
Yes.
You've been
Very
to You've
blessed.
been to Asia. Mm-hmm. We've been to Africa. So the continents you're getting all of them. But
I've hit them all except for the one that I might not hit. Antarctica doesn't sound.
No,
I don't know. We'll see.
Excursion sounds fun.
Yeah,
as long as we can run fast. Gotta be able to get away from those boogers. Okay, real quick about Greece. Mm-hmm. Did you learn? Okay, let me back up. When you were in Paris last year, you started speaking the language a little bit.
Yes, it was a struggle, but I did.
You did, because by the time I got there, it was like bonjour and all this stuff.
Yes.
I was like, well, look at you. This time, how did that go?
Awful.
Really? Is it harder?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm just not used to hearing it. At least there's things in my purview where I can hear French more so than Greek. And then when you look at their alphabet,
Yes.
and they have 18 letters in most words. That's a bit of an exaggeration, but it is a lot. But it's we didn't run into people who, rarely did we run across anyone in any of the restaurants or hotels or driving around where someone didn't speak English.
Okay.
So, but it is when spoken, it's a beautiful language, but they don't just speak. They literally yell.
Do they?
Oh, gosh. Yeah. Like I thought people were fighting all day long. And it was jarring at first. Because when they're passionately speaking in Greek to one another, there is a heightened sense of energy. So
I would love that.
Oh, I know. And it became something I wanted to talk about when I would meet Americans who lived there. And because we weren't with our aunts right away. So we had, 10 days on our own, Mackie and I. And, but I just found it to be fascinating. So by the time I got, met up with them, I was like, what is up with the screaming and yelling?
Imagine it.
I did. I just thought fights were ensuing all the time.
And you don't like it. Because if I speak one little, to throw out a Greek word, iota above the decibel I'm supposed to be at on an airplane, you're like, hey, you're screaming. So I bet that was uncomfortable.
It was, there's so many things that about, that area of the world, what I saw, it's some of the most beautiful, it's literally some of the most beautiful places I've ever seen because we were in so many different places. So that was,
a big thing.
The pictures are, and I think probably all of us have seen the pictures of the white buildings, or the blue roofs, the whole Santorini thing, and the amazing Mediterranean is just gorgeous. But there was just times, and even going back and looking at our pictures, what I saw, it just wasn't fully captured there. And we lucked out because our first night in Santorini was the blue moon. So imagine that moon over the water. And we tried to take pictures, and I posted a few, but it was nothing compared to what we saw. So it was just great. The people are amazing. We didn't run into one sourpuss. At all.
Good. Nobody ruined it.
No, people yelled at us, but that was out of love.
They're yelling, bring it.
It's just, I can't explain. I won't go off on that, but the food was incredible. We barely ran into a meal or a taste that we just weren't moaning and oohing over. So that was fantastic. I did experience something that I've never experienced before.
Okay.
So the primary mode of transportation between the islands are these, what they call these hydrofoils or speedboats. So, in preparing for the trip, because I did it so fast, I just trusted my aunts to be like, oh, yeah, you just book on here, and they sent me the link and I did it. But in my mind, I'm thinking it's like, I don't know, maybe a boat that could hold 20 people. And no, like these things are massive, massive ships.
Really?
That carry cars underneath them, and they go super fast. And I got us in a cabin where and it was like, ooh, I can get seasick really quick. But it had a upper deck cabin. I had cocktails. It was so amazing. But the thing is that these things are, just imagine 100-foot boat, like bigger than that.
Yeah.
And multi-stories.
Barge.
It is. It's a massive speedboat barge.
Not like a tugboat like what we're used to.
No. And then they whip into these ports. It's like nothing I've ever seen. And then it just drops down, and you're all underneath the belly by this time of this boat. And you just grab your luggage. And I was like, I wonder how many people's bags get stolen. Because it's just, here in America, we go through all of this stuff.
The checkpoints and
Good
the stickers
Lord.
and the labels.
No, that part was fascinating, just studying the culture and being observant to the way they live. And especially when we were in Crete, where my aunts live, or our family lives, they don't lock their doors. And it's governed. Wow. The civilization, the communities pretty much take care. I heard a siren one time the entire 2.5 weeks, which is odd for me because I wake up to that every day.
Yes.
Living in New York. And so anyway, fascinating. I didn't realize I was going to talk so much about Greece, but I'm glad you asked. It was amazing, and feel really blessed. So
wonderful.
Definitely going back.
Well, I will just mention, I do have a little party trick. I don't know that I've ever told you this. I don't know that it matters, but I know the Greek alphabet.
Oh, you do?
I do. I know the whole Greek alphabet. I just do.
Because you were in a sorority?
I think so.
Oh, goodness gracious. Well,
but
I know alpha.
Know that everybody can do
beta.
Alpha, beta, gamma, delta, epsilon, zeta, eta, theta, iota, kappa, lambda, mu, nu, xi, omicron, pi, rho, sigma, tau, upsilon, phi, chi, psi, omega.
Wow, that's impressive. And I bet that was a drinking game.
It is.
Yeah.
How many tequila shots do you take before you bail out?
Yeah. Well, interesting. Anyway, I recommend anybody who gets the opportunity to go to Greece. Italy has always just been such my choice. I love France too. But wow, Greece is up there now. So there'll be a competition for my attention and dollars. That's for sure.
Is it warmer? Like when I think of Greece, I think of very warm.
It is, but it's not. It's a pleasant warm.
Yeah. Okay.
Really
breezy warm.
Breezy. At least when we were there. When we were there at the beginning of September. So, and they say that September, October. That's
the time.
Is the time.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
In the spring. Anyway, it was amazing.
All right. Well, I'm just going to start planning my trip to Greece.
Okay.
Now.
I'll give you all my notes.
Perfect. All right. Before we jump into our topic today, let's hop to this quick advertisement. Hello, Self Smarter listeners. I know you've heard me say it time and time again, but I'm going to say it again. As we share more podcast episodes, the more we know what you like most. And now, after recording and sharing with you for a year and a half,
we now know how incredibly important the Enneagram test is to you. And quite frankly, I think we know why. Because the truth is, first, we all want to know more about ourselves. Self-knowledge is very important for growth. And second, it's only natural to want to know more about the people we share our lives with. So family members, friends, and coworkers. So this brings me to the point. So thank you for hanging on here with me. Danelle and I are now offering sessions for leaders and their teams to help improve their communication and performance simply by getting to know one another and ourselves even better than we do today. We will lead you and your team down a path of self-knowledge, and we will help you understand your coworkers better so you can all work more effectively and productively. And listen up, now that we're headed into the holidays, this is a great time to get some coaching booked before the new year. The greatest news of all of this and more information is available at beselfsmarter.com. We're calling it Improving Team Dynamics, and we're offering a pilot price point right now for $3.99 per person. And that is going to change. But right now, between now and the end of the year, we want to offer you that cool deal. So that includes fees for both of the tests. So you don't have to pay for that separately. That all comes with it for all of your team members, and one-on-one time with Danelle and me to provide you all with the input you need to improve your team's dynamics before we rock 2024. So check out the website or email us at info@beselfsmarter.com to learn more, and we can't wait to hear from you.
Okay, so today we're talking about the difference between leading and managing.
Yep.
Which we talk about here actually quite a bit. At least I do. I talk a lot to people about that. Like, that's a management move versus that's a leadership move.
And when you say here, you mean our company.
DMA.
Yeah, right.
We do. Yep. And this is something that you kind of opened my eyes to along the way. I thought they were synonymous.
Yeah, most people do.
And I think, and the truth is that they're extremely different.
They are.
And today we're going to really get into that. We're going to talk about the two. We're going to examine the real differences. And just to kick us off, while both are very critical for success, they serve distinct purposes and require different sets of skills. So today we'll talk about the fundamental differences between management and leadership, shedding light on why each is vital and how they complement one another. So complementary.
Yes.
If you're wondering why this topic is so important, I found this awesome study while researching, and it said that 50% of employees left their job, quote unquote, to get away from their manager to improve their overall life at some point in their career. I don't think that's shocking.
No,
I believe that.
Yeah.
So this tells me we have work to do because yes, leaders more than likely have been in or are managing people. And if people are leaving, 50% of the population are leaving their jobs because of you, basically. What is that? How helpful is that? What are we doing about it?
Yeah. And I before we dive into this, I think it's really important. And, in my preparation for this, I didn't see this spelled out specifically a lot, but I do think that we need to go in with the mindset to this topic around we can be both.
Yes.
And we most likely have been in the position to be both. What we want to uncover today is to really look at the differences, but then to also help us be more conscious of when we're in a position of management versus a position of leadership.
Yes.
And so if we don't think of them as roles as much as, or no, I shouldn't say that, as titles. Let's not think of this. That's what my recommendation to all of us is, let's not think of these two designations as titles. Let's think of them as roles, or honestly how we're showing up and where our mind is. And so I think because, again, it goes back to both of them are critical for success, and people need to be led and managed. And so knowing the difference, I think, is very helpful. And then we're going to talk a little bit. I want to talk about the historical context of kind of how we've gotten here today, where both are so critical.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about historical context after we talk about definitions.
Okay.
Tell us a little bit about what's the difference between the two.
All right. So with management, you should think of it as the art of efficiency. I think that's a helpful designation. And managers focus on planning, organizing, controlling resources and processes to achieve specific goals. Yep. They are responsible for setting objectives, monitoring progress, and ensuring efficiency. Again, we're taking these definitions from things that we found through research. And when I say they, that does indicate someone in a certain position. But let's just think about the roles right now. And then with leadership, it is the art of influence. And I really do like those comparisons, management being the art of efficiency, leadership being the art of influence. So leadership, on the other hand, is about inspiring and guiding people toward a shared vision and a brighter future. Leaders are responsible for setting the direction, motivating their teams, and fostering innovation. Mm-hmm. And so I think those two definitions that we found are helpful to start off us describing the differences.
Absolutely. And if you're in a moment with someone that you're leading or managing, it's like, am I saying this because it's the efficient thing to do? Or am I saying this because I'm trying to influence somebody? It's a very distinct difference.
Right.
I'm super conscious about that in the moment, but I had to train myself to become very conscious and open my mind to that. So you talked about wanting to talk about the genesis of these, the history.
Yeah, I think too, I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal, and it was helpful because it talked about, if you think about the Industrial Revolution, where most of our modern management philosophies were developed, the beginning of them were developed during that phase. So there's a lot of basically factories and, there was, a foreman that led, there was a lot of managing of people and resources going on during that time in our history. And now we've evolved more to what I would consider a knowledge forward workforce. So knowing how people, knowing more about the people that are actually doing the job, to where it's just, people back then, they were easily replaceable because it was like, you're going to go create this part to put on this thing and move
forward.
Next guy and the next thing. Right. And in today's world, knowing more about the individuals, not just what they're capable of, but who they are and how they're wired, as we talk about a lot on here, is really where we have grown into. We still have the need for management. Mm-hmm. People still need, like in our world, we have to manage people, say for instance, through a project. Okay, if we're launching a website,
right?
There's a lot of management that goes on when you're creating and launching a website. That's right.
A lot of efficiency.
And so, in our role, whatever it is, whether we're the one working on the website or leading the project, there's a lot of things that have to happen. At the same time, if we're doing right by the people working on that project, we're also leading them if to set them up for success, talking about here's what success looks like when this thing is launched. Right. Last time we did a website, we ran into a few things. We shouldn't, let's do everything, let's think about how we can avoid, challenges that we had the last go round, or this is your first time doing this, really setting that person up for success. So it's not just about the tasks that are necessary to do the work. It's also about how that person is feeling, what that person, might be not just feeling, but what that person might be dealing with relative to how many times that they've launched a website, So that's really, I think, where the nuances can come in. And so it's really good to know the differences, because you may be the person who's setting that person, the team up for the project itself, and you may also be the person who's going to lead them through that.
That's right.
That's why I was careful to say, if you are in a position to lead, you should also, most likely, you're also managing some of the processes or some of the work that has to get done.
Yeah, for sure. And you kind of touched on it a little bit, but there are some key characteristics of the activities and the behaviors. You're almost talking about the combination of the two, the activities and the behaviors, we notice when we see the two in action that are different. So while they can look very similar, in fact, there are some critical differences. So I wanted to talk about that. So starting with management, what's different? They're very task oriented. Managers are primarily focused on accomplishing specific tasks and objectives. We know what needs to be done. Here's how you're going to do it. They create detailed plans, timelines, and allocate resources to achieve these goals. In our world, that's how this goes. Hierarchy. Management typically, not always, operates within established hierarchies, which personally at our culture and DMA, we don't love that.
No.
But traditionally, to your point, historically, that's how it goes. Managers have clear authority and control over their subordinates. Blech, we don't like that word, subordinates. But
it should be replaced by the people.
And their decisions are often guided by organizational policies and procedures. Blech, we also don't like that either. So hierarchy for us in our culture is awkward. That's something we try to avoid. But in the world out there, we know that exists, so we have to talk about it. Another difference is stability. Managers aim to maintain stability and order in the workplace. I think leaders kind of toe the line on this too, but really the managers are the ones that are directly having the conversations about that was inappropriate. You know, they focus on minimizing risks and ensuring that processes run smoothly and predictably. And then last but not least, the difference, starting with management, and the differences are short-term perspective. Managers often have a short-term perspective versus long, concentrating on achieving immediate goals and addressing day-to-day challenges. What's the COG? And I think we read a book in college called The Q. It was in a business class, and that taught me about COGs. The whole book is about this. It's like a lesson in management. And it talks about how identifying and fixing within a reasonable amount of time can be the difference between profitability and not. So if you think about it that way from a management perspective, it is a big deal.
Management's necessary.
It's a big deal.
Right. Management's absolutely necessary. But I think what we're trying to present to our listeners and what we've had to work through is we can be managers and leaders. It's just being able to decipher when you're in one of those roles. You know, when you have the opportunity, and when we know the differences, we can cite ourselves and say, oh, the team needs, management right now. But I can't forget that there's also a time for leadership too. So even though we're sharing information and we're sharing it as if they're two separate people, I would probably argue that the majority of our listeners are currently in needing or literally executing on both sides of this. And so just as we tee that up, but let's define the characteristics of leadership, and using this kind of the same format that Meg used, is that leaders are more people-oriented. So if management is more task-oriented, leaders are more people-oriented, and they focus on, of course, the people and the development of those individuals. And they, when we're leading, we're building strong relationships, we're understanding people's strengths and weaknesses, and empowering team members to reach their full potential.
Right.
So when we're in that leadership role, that's what we're doing. In terms of also, in terms of characteristics, inspiration. Leadership is about inspiring and influencing others to follow a vision or cause willingly. Leaders lead by example and create a sense of purpose that goes beyond the day-to-day task. And so while we may be managing the day-to-day task, we should also be thinking about what's beyond that. Where are we going? Why is this important? And so another characteristic when we are in leadership is adaptability. So leaders often embrace change and uncertainty, recognizing that innovation and growth can come from stepping outside of their comfort zone. And then, whereas you stated that management is short-term perspective, on the other hand, leadership is more long-term perspective. So when we're leading, we're taking a longer view. We're considering broader goals, future prospects for the organization, and we're in visionary mode when we're leading. We should be, at least. And we want to help our team see the path toward a better tomorrow that's beyond the project that we may all be working on or that we actually may be managing. So I think, those descriptions are good for us when we're thinking about the roles of management and leadership.
Totally. And I think, where you and I sit in this organization, I manage less. I lead more.
Yeah.
I lead other leaders to manage.
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yeah. So, for example, if there's a behavioral issue on the team and that person, I can easily have that conversation with somebody. Mm-hmm. But I'd rather use it as a learning opportunity for the person they report to, their leader, to be able to have that conversation. Hey, what was that? That was awkward, or whatever happened. Or, hey, the website checklist, I can see we're 2 weeks behind on it, you know? So I think for us, the biggest challenge, I think for a long time, we talked about leaders, the teaching and the training of leaders. Well, hey, whose shoulders does that fall on? That falls on ours.
Right.
To teach them the difference and to use every opportunity as a lesson in one or the other.
Yeah. And I think if you look at the different roles that you have within your organization or within, again, wherever you're leading, literally. But I mean, if I think about you, yes, at DMA, you are spending more time in that leadership role, less in the management, because you're leading people who are doing more of the managing.
Yep.
But relative to this podcast,
Yeah.
you literally are managing a lot of what we do here. And then when we're, we all met earlier this week, we talked about the rest of the year and what we hope to accomplish next year, then you were leading us.
Right.
You were leading us to say, okay, what's working? What could we be doing better? And to me, that was when, you stepped away from the management role of the podcast that you typically are in day to day. And you led us to think about the future, to think about things that we can improve on, things that, that are working really well. So I just wanted to give an example of, that you may not even be aware of that
It's a good point.
You're seeing it.
Yeah. So now let's talk about some of the differences. Let's just we do have a list here, but let's just talk about them.
Yeah.
So let's start with further defining them and the comparisons of the two. And it's not necessarily like management versus leadership. We're going to give other descriptions of ways that help leaders identify when I'm doing this or that.
Yeah.
I'm managing or I'm leading.
Right.
Cues almost.
Yeah, I like that. So I would start off with, I think a good place to start is that when you're looking at influence versus authority.
Yes.
And so managers, when we're managing, we're typically working in a job function, right? Like we have functional things that need to happen. Whereas when we're leading, we're influencing someone to, do their job a certain way or to think about the work in a greater perspective. We're influencing versus literally having the authority to guide people through the work.
Right.
So I think that is
like that.
a good difference to think through.
I like that a lot. And I think, relative to influence, how much of your time are you spending influencing versus teaching, basically, is the key there. And it just because, to your point about having a job title with manager in it, I mean, we have a lot of managers around here.
Yeah.
And they have to manage the work.
That's right.
Like they have to make sure they're checking daily the boxes that need to be checked in order for progress to be moving, the efficiencies that we talked about. Leading by influence is more like, what do you think?
Right.
How do you see us growing? You know? So, or what would be the normal logical next step? So-and-so, Okay. Another difference I think that's so evident is empowerment versus control, where management, and I don't love the word control because I think it has some negative connotations or at least feelings, but still I've got to get my arms around this process that we have to make sure happens in order for it to be successful. And so I kind of do need to control the process.
Yeah.
I don't have to control the people.
Right.
I've got to control the process. I've got to empower people with information and access to things that they need so that they can get the job done the way that we want them to.
Yeah.
So at any given time, to your point, I'm managing, now I'm leading.
Right. And I think it's too is the reason why we're, I think this is a very important exercise to go through or thing to train our brains around is because sometimes you can get stuck in one role or the other.
Yeah.
And you miss opportunities. So if we're in a leader, and so I think it's important, and I think it most often happens when you've been mainly in a management role, getting the work done or leading people to get the work done. You're in charge of the work or you're part of the team that needs to get it done. And then you're starting to elevate in an organization and have the opportunity to lead. That's where I think sometimes the consciousness of it, if
it has to,
it can get missed.
Yeah.
And you don't realize, this is the difference of these two roles. And so anyway, I think that when you're thinking through them, the differences, there's sometimes is a very slight nuance, and then other times there's a distinction that's very clear. But a lot of the times it's not that way.
No.
So I think another difference is when you're looking at taking risk.
Yes.
I think it's another area where you can start to identify some things is oftentimes when we're managing, we are less likely to really think about something that might be risky because we're really following protocol most of the time, or rules or processes. You fill in the blank as it relates to your business, your work. And whereas when we're leading, we can think more about things that might take on a notion of risk, doing something in a different way than perhaps is what our norm is, or in order to improve this, we're going to try this out. And, we do, especially in a world of innovation, I mean, you have to be, but I think we have to be in the mindset of, this is a little bit risky, but here's the reward of us trying this differently or seeing where this might go, which could easily be in a role where we're thinking about processes, but we're not necessarily in the mode where we've got to follow everything to the exact order of the way it's been.
Right.
So I think that's another interesting distinction.
Mm-hmm. Okay. How about prioritizing tasks versus people? So managers prioritize getting the job done well and efficiently. Mm-hmm. And so they are highly concerned with the how and the what.
Yep.
Whereas leaders concentrate on the why and the who, emphasizing personal growth and development. So why did you feel that way? Who do you think is going to be the best for the job versus, how are you going to get it done, when, and what are you going to do?
Right.
Like so different.
It's almost like brass tacks.
Yeah.
Managers, when we're managing, we're thinking about brass tacks in that light. And when we're leading, we're thinking about why is this even important in the first place or how people are reacting to it.
Yeah. So for organizations, is there a way for leaders or managers to learn how to, of course, there's the living in it day to day to understand the difference, but let's say you see me and you're like, Megan needs some help making that leap from management to leadership, or vice versa. So-and-so's a natural leader. I see that they're really good at that. However, they could get more into the details about how to make things more efficient.
Yeah. I mean, you're basically talking about how we can bridge the difference between, I mean, I personally believe that, with the workforce today, and it doesn't really matter what the industry is, I think organizations need to value both.
Totally.
I think organizations need to invest in both training, development for managers and leaders. And sometimes that should be a lot of the times the same person.
Yeah.
So I think if we can be more conscious today to say we need both, and our likelihood of success goes up when more people in our organization can do both, and, can understand the difference and utilize both of these roles to accelerate their success and ultimately the company's success. I will say, though, I do believe that not everyone wants to fully possess these roles.
Totally.
I mean, there are people who literally want to come in and they're tenacious.
Right.
They love the tactics. They want to stay in that. And I always think about my Drew's dad, and Drew's dad was a very successful aerospace engineer. He worked on the teams to build the F-16 and the F-22. He was so good at being an engineer that he got the opportunity to move up. I don't know if he was working for Lockheed or GE. I know he worked for both companies, I think, at some point. I might get that wrong. Drew will have to fact check me on that. But they put him to school. He went and got his MBA at SMU, while he had a family working and all that. They paid for it. And then he gets into this role of managing that required leading, and he was miserable. He just wanted to build fighter planes. Mm-hmm. And that's what they put him back into that role. So I do believe, and we have people at this organization that prefer to do the work. And I think there's the other side of that is there's people who are naturally gifted at leading people. That's where they thrive. But if you give them a list of 5 things to do, it might take 3 weeks. And so I know those are extreme exaggerations that I'm throwing out here, but I do think, you asked me the question to bridge the two. I would say, based on our experience, the majority of people benefit by being trained and developed into both areas.
Yeah.
So
I agree. Okay. I think there's a way too to recognize the leadership potential. I think you did that with me. Mm-hmm. So I was a good manager of work.
You were.
I don't know about people, but I was a good manager of work. Like, let's move this forward and here we go and and deadlines. Then I had to make that bridge over to leadership. Mm-hmm. And you you were doing it on purpose, but I didn't know that all the time because I guess I'm just dense that way. But I started noticing you talking to me differently. Like you were asking me different types of questions. So I picked up on that. Obviously we've talked about, I think even on this podcast, it took me too long to get there. And I think part of the reason is I didn't realize what you were doing, but the impact that you were making was showing up in other ways. Mm-hmm. Like I started doing things differently.
Yeah. Well, I think to be fair, I didn't know I was doing it a lot of the times because everyone knows the genesis of this podcast is because I wasn't a great leader.
Yeah.
Yeah, I wasn't in the way that because I didn't understand the role of leadership versus me managing this company. Yeah. And because of our size, hell, I was in the work and, all the way through. And so I would just say that you in particular, I could see that you were a great manager of the work. You're one of the best we had in terms of leading the marketing work that needed to be done and managing those processes and managing that work. But I knew in order for you to fully sit into the seat that you're in today, you did need to foster your leadership skills. And the reason why I knew that was because I was learning that about myself. And I didn't get it right for many, many years. And so once I decided to commit to becoming a better version of myself, specifically in the realm of leadership and understanding the differences, I could then apply some of those lessons to you. Nice. But teaching someone to lead is a little bit different.
So different.
Yeah. And so anyway, I think that again, the point being is that being organizations that are conscious about both of these roles, and that yes, there's of course going to be people who are going to just thrive in one or the other, but the majority of people should be able to take on both roles, and sometimes at the same time, and then sometimes it's more of a gradual. For you, it was a bit more gradual of you going out of the work of managing the work into leading the people who do possess those roles for the most part. So, yeah, I think again, we're figuring stuff out as we go, which is why we wanted to bring this up. And it's not just it's not super clear in every sense for management versus leadership, but I do that, our intention today is to tee up things that give you context so that you can start to identify the differences for your own, for yourself, but then also those that, that you're leading. So.
Okay. Okay, Danelle, what do you know for sure about management and leadership?
I mean, I've probably said it, this will be the fifth time I said it today, but, I do think that the magic happens when organizations of any kind, when they can organize themselves to realize that when management and leadership can coexist in harmony, meaning identifying those in the organization that truly possess the ability to hold both roles, and knowing, okay, in this instance, we need some training over here on the management side. Okay, over here, we need some support developing this leader. And so that's what I know for sure is I think organizations who invest in their people in that way, I think we're going to see better outcomes in our organizations and results.
So what I'm hearing you say, Danelle, is really it's just an ongoing, continual cycle of managers wanting to lead. There's that. You mentioned that. And then also leaders identifying the managers who could potentially become good leaders or are naturally gifted at that through coaching, experiential, every day.
Yeah, I mean, it should be a continuous cycle. If I'm stating that I believe that, when organizations can see and invest in supporting both roles with individuals, yeah, it is a continuous cycle. I think it's another way to say it. Yeah.
Yeah. No start and stop. Just start.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to the whole thing is we want to create these, I don't know if the word is boxes, but we want to put people in a particular box.
That's
what I'm saying is let's not do that anymore. Let's look at management and leadership as being something that can coexist in harmony. Yeah, absolutely. And that doesn't mean that this group over here is only the managers and this group over here is the leaders. In some instances, that is the reality. But I'm saying in the way work has evolved beyond the industrial era, our 75 years ago, 100 years ago, this is what it should be today. So.
And it's only going to get better.
Well, if we choose to do so, absolutely.
And that's what we're here to do.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Let's transition to our music moment. So, full disclosure, we are recording this and Jimmy Buffett has passed as of a week ago. So you'll hear this in October, but let's talk about Jimmy Buffett.
Yeah, we still want to honor.
We still want to honor him.
You're right.
What an amazing artist.
Yes.
I literally think he was like the first memory other than Blondie or John Travolta and Olivia Newton-John. He is the next person that I remember. Yes. Okay. How about you? Did you grow up? I don't know this about you. Did you grow up listening to Jimmy Buffett?
Yeah. I wouldn't say that my parents were parrot heads or any of that, but yeah, you couldn't escape his music. And, it was growing up in a music-centric household, of course. I mean, Jimmy Buffett was on there. It's just interesting that, we all have those Jimmy Buffett songs, and I'm sure you're going to ask me my favorite, and I certainly want to know yours. But I took some time because I was just taken back that he lost his life so soon. I think 76. I mean, I think that's young today. So I just doing research and looking at him. Yes, he was an incredible artist, but I mean, he was a billionaire.
Yeah.
A billionaire and not on records sold. And what I didn't realize is that he had 3 number 1 best-selling books. So it wasn't just his franchises and all the things that he franchised, from blenders to you name it. But I mean, it was his books too. So he was just a fascinating man, humanitarian. I think some of that information gets kind of it's under, under the radar.
Yeah.
I mean, maybe he wanted it that way, which makes me respect him even more. But he was just an incredible human being, what he was able to accomplish. And he did it with just this cool attitude. I don't know what else to say. And what I love is his brand stayed the same. So did I listen to his music when I was younger? Sure, because it was on. And my first recollection of him is exactly what it stayed. And I don't know. I just I think he was an authentic human being.
I think so too. And so many people love this man.
Yes. I mean, his fans he was the OG when it comes to creating a fan base that actually had a name and, a following. I guess, there's several others from Grateful Dead and stuff like that, but he was definitely one of the OG.
Along those lines.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. And he probably was a deadhead.
Yeah.
I'm guessing.
I'm guessing.
What was you brought it up, but what was your favorite Jimmy Buffett song?
It still is my favorite. Come Monday.
That's mine too.
Yeah. Is it?
Yeah.
I mean, I love it. It's such a simplistic song.
Yes.
Just about how he feels about being away from whatever love that was. I don't know if it was a wife or someone else whenever he wrote it, but he's just talking about touring but it's so beautiful and you can relate to it even though you may not be an artist, but what that feels like to travel and come home. And
such a good one.
It's a great one. Great one.
I do love Margaritaville. I mean, anytime you hear that music start playing.
Happy.
Yeah.
That's a happy song.
And in college when that would come on, are you kidding me? Everybody would lose their minds.
And I think too, one of the things I just reminiscing through his music, Mackie, he passed while Mackie and I were away. Mm-hmm. And we listened to Jimmy Buffett radio a couple of days because we were out on the water and enjoying it. But I loved all the collaborations he did too. I mean, people were clamoring to do a song with Jimmy Buffett, from Alan Jackson to, the list is long, long, long. So I enjoyed hearing some of those songs.
That's a good point because I was going to say, I grew up listening to country music. Like that's what my parents listened to. So that's what I listened to other than Elvis. Well, which could be a crossover, but Jimmy Buffett was one of the first memorable crossovers for me. Mm-hmm. Like Come Monday, I remember hearing that on the radio, but I have no idea if it was on the pop. It could have been on the pop station or it could have been on the country station. I think Margaritaville ended up, but he was country.
He was country, but one of the things I was reading about with him is he also, a lot of his songs were on the easy listening Billboard chart.
Which makes sense. The yacht rock.
Well, I don't think that's a list, but it's something like, the easy listening is actually a Billboard list. And it was interesting because they said that it took him a long time to sway away from that.
Did you want to sway away?
I guess. I don't know. That's what the article said.
But it's perfect for him. Easy listening, easy living, easy listening.
I don't know. Maybe there's something negative. But anyway, rest in peace, Jimmy. And, he gave us a lot of gifts in his lifetime. So
he did. All right. Let's all remember that we'll put some links in the show notes. We would really appreciate it if you'd tell your friends about Self Smarter. We can tell, I say this every week, but we can tell you're doing it.
And our numbers, we just continue to be, again, we continue to gain new listeners, and we just really appreciate that. I hope it's because our listeners that have been with us for a while are sharing our content. We certainly are meeting a lot of people and getting, encouraging people to listen to our podcast. And we also want to encourage you to please rate the podcast. Mm-hmm. So if you listen to it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, please take 1 minute and go give us a rating. And if you feel like a comment, great. Otherwise, just star it. And that really helps us. So thank you for that in advance.
Don't forget, we have the new website, beselfsmarter.com, that has resources curated specifically for you there.
Yes.
So go take a look at that. And until next week, we send you a link with grateful hearts.
Goodbye, everyone. As always, you can connect with us on Instagram and Facebook at Self Smarter Podcasts. You can also leave a rating or review if you enjoyed what you heard today. Not only does this mean so much to us, but it also helps other leaders and future leaders find our community. Thank you for taking time out of your day to join us in becoming Self Smarter. This podcast is produced by Snacks Media, and music is from a free platform. Well, that is until Brandy Carlisle reaches out to us to write the original score for our podcast. Friends, have a great rest of your day.